All right, ready, guys?
Ready.
All right,
Ready.
What's up, guys? My name is Mario.
My name is Jesus.
My name's Pao.
Welcome back to another Vive con Huevos podcast.
Woo!
Today, guys, I'm pretty sure the majority of you listeners have binge watched Narcos Mexico, Griselda, and today,
All of the above.
all the above, all that good stuff, all the things that our parents probably wouldn't have let us see when we were younger. But
Probably.
anyways, guys. But on the way to editing such shows as Griselda and Narcos Mexico. Was it Narcos or Narcos Mexico or just Narcos Mexico?
Narcos Mexico.
Okay.
Ajá.
Okay.
En Griselda.
Okay.
Ajá.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure on the road to that there was a lot of inner battles, a long, tough road, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of imposter syndrome. So with us today, without further ado, because our listeners know that I love to ramble, on our couch today, we have our good friend, Joaquin Elizondo, in the house.
Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, a little round of applause. For those of you who don't know, well, first of all, thank you so much. I know I messaged you and then I ghosted you for 2 weeks.
Bro, stop ghosting our guests.
Like, what happened?
Yeah, I do that so much. I'm so sorry, but I do that to
I'm gonna take over. I'm gonna take over the Instagram. That's it.
And then randomly I was like, man, Joaquin hasn't answered back. And I checked back and I was like, oh shit. My bad. But Joaquin, thank you so much. I know you have a busy schedule. We were talking about it before we
Yes.
hopped on the podcast. You're going on vacation soon. I can't wait to see the pictures.
Yes.
But thank you so much for being here, my man.
Well, no, I thank you guys for having me here. I'm super excited because I was telling you earlier, this is the first time I do an in-person interview.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This is what I would love to do on my own podcast. I do it all remotely, but it doesn't, this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
In person, hanging out. I love it. So thank you guys.
No, yeah, of course. But you do have the advantage of the scheduling thing that we were talking about. Because sometimes I do want to get certain guests and they're like, we're not free for another 4 months, but we can do it virtually. I was like, it's just not it's not my feel. It's a different feeling.
It's a different
It's
vibe.
a way different vibe. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, from the bottom of my heart, it really does mean a lot. It's actually really cool to know that you were within our circle. We were talking before the podcast started and I had mentioned that I want to start tapping into the San Diego kind of scene as far as when it comes down to creators or just people who are doing really cool things. And I feel like San Diego is just very untapped with that.
There's a lot of talent, but
There
not
is
a lot of people know.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because that's often how I felt. I grew up in Tijuana, Chula Vista, and that is often how I felt growing up. I mean, I was always a very creative person, was always, that kid with the camera. I was always recording stuff. I was, recording music. I mean, just anything you can think of, just be creative. But I felt that, yes, I felt that there was a lot of creativity to untap here in this region. I'm going to say the region, both sides of the border. And so, yeah, again, another reason why I'm so excited to be here, because I love what you're doing. And this is something I truly, truly, truly support from this here, I guess I'm going to say our local community, my people. Yeah. I love it. I love it. So, this is awesome. And congratulations for having this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. Slowly growing. Growing pains for sure, but slowly growing. And honestly, it's an honor to have people such as yourself to be on here. But before we start deep diving, Jesus Christ, the ADHD is hitting hard right now, guys. Deep diving into our conversation. For the people who don't know who Joaquin is, let's give him a little brief introduction of your well-rounded kind of resume that you have.
Well, I mean, I've been working, like you said, on scripted television shows like Narcos Mexico and Griselda. And between that, I worked on another show called The Hot Zone Anthrax and Dark Winds for AMC. So I have been working in film and scripted TV now for the past, I guess, I'm going to say 7 years in LA. But, prior to that, I was kind of out there just, trying many different things. I didn't have, I guess, set goals, or a focus. I was just kind of, honestly, it was just taking projects because they would pay me, honestly, right? But my dream was always to work in these types of projects. Like I always wanted to do film. Like I went to the University of Michigan to study film, but I never knew how you got there, right? I mean, I would see, like, for example, like I watch movies and see the credits. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there's people clearly working on this, but it's like, how
does my name end up on there?
How do you get there? I mean, how do you do it? So I didn't know. So for many years, and literally like 15 years, I spent like just kind of, like you brought up self-doubt, because that was kind of it. It was like, well, I don't have what it takes. I don't even know what it takes, honestly, to tell you the truth. And again, I was just kind of out there, just winging it, and then just working in like local news and like documentaries. I obviously did a lot of weddings when I first started out.
That's cool.
And it's all great, honestly. And all this stuff, honestly, like I still use all those skills that I learned. I use it to this day, like on the stuff that I work on now. But I was just kind of, I was just had no focus. I was just out there kind of just exploring things, and it wasn't until I got to LA that I decided to say, I decided like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is my dream. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure it out. I grew up in Tijuana and Chula Vista, and I was always like, when I was at home in the summers, like as a kid, I was always recording, say, my friends, doing my home. I was a kid with a camera, like always recording my friends, shooting movies. And then when I discovered editing, and it was like, tape to tape, it had 2 VCRs, right? We had to kind of play, pause, and this and that. And I was like, wow, I really found that fascinating that you can like just manipulate, images and sound. I found that like so entertaining. And so I think around high school, I watched the film Casino, directed by Martin Scorsese. And that is when I really like wanted to pursue a career in filmmaking. And so I went to the University of Michigan to study film. It wasn't my first choice. I wanted to go to UCLA. They did not accept me. Yeah. I was really bummed about that. And so I went to Michigan, which is great because it was like, it was just far away, something completely different. I was the only Mexican there. And that in itself was a culture shock. How about culture shock?
Yeah.
That was crazy. I mean, I literally, I remember getting there to Ann Arbor, and the next day I was looking up how to transfer to SDSU. I was freaked out. I want to go home. I want to go home. No,
clicking his heels.
It was like I don't belong here. Like this is crazy. And actually, I met this guy at my dorm, hall, whatever, from Nicaragua.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh,
finally,
Spanish. I'm like, oh my god. Okay, and that I got to say that is what kept me there.
Yeah. Oh wow.
It's kept me there. And so, anyways, I stayed in Michigan. It was a great experience. I mean, cold as hell. I mean, honestly.
Well, that's like real snow and shoveling.
It's real cold.
Well, like the first year was great because, I had seen snow, but I had never lived in like snow. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great. But then like next year, I'm like, all right, I'm over it. Like this sucks. But anyways, I studied. I was actually out there to study computer science.
Oh wow.
Because I was wanting to be an engineer and like working. Well, I figured like, that's what you do, right? It's like you got to go become an engineer or a lawyer or whatever, right? And so I didn't like math.
And you were in computer science.
And I was
it just sounded cool.
And it's like this sucks. Like this is not for me. And like what I really like is just like making movies. Like that's what I like. But that's not a career. Right? That's not a career. You don't do that. And so when I was trying to pick majors, then like a different major, I was like literally went to like business school. I was like, this is boring too. I was thinking about like kinesiology. I'm like, well, and then I even went to like art history classes. I'm like, no, definitely not that. And I'm like, I want to do film. And I'm like, but that's like, you can't make a career out of that. And then eventually, one day I had like a crisis, and I called my grandma, like, what am I doing? I don't know what to do. And it's like, just do what makes you happy, right? And I'm like, all right, let's do what makes you happy. And I just went down that film route, and then there I go. And then, I came back to San Diego, and then I started working in local news in Telemundo, Univision, Spanish language TV stations here around town, shooting and editing, and it was great. And then eventually moved to New York. I just picked up one day, quit my job here in San Diego, went backpacking in Southeast Asia for like a month,
Wow.
and then moved to New York. I had an uncle living out there in Jersey, and went there, no jobs, no contacts, and just kind of like, all right, let's see what's out there.
Talk about a Vive con Huevos
For real,
moment.
guys. Hey, let's wrap this up. And that's the podcast, guys. Thank you so much.
I'm rambling. I ramble too. So how you
No, this is perfect.
Honestly, that's perfect because the listeners are tired of me rambling. It's
Another
been,
rambler.
It's been 70 something episodes, or I don't even know what episode we're on, and I bet you we're losing listeners because I ramble too much. But you said something that I actually wanted to bring up was the culture shock. So you went to Michigan, and then I did want to bring up your stay in New York, which I feel like within San Diego, we kind of live in a bubble. I kind of saw that bubble because my parents are Salvadorian. So both of my parents are from El Salvador. So to me, whenever I spoke Spanish to somebody, it was like, oh, what part of Mexico are you from? And I would say El Salvador. And people who didn't know where El Salvador was, they're like, oh, what part of Mexico is that? You know?
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, why don't people know anything else besides United States and Mexico? At least from San Diego, right? Or at least Southern California. I just feel like that's the general consensus.
Yeah.
And then moving, I can only imagine the culture shock. You said your roommate in University in Michigan was from Nicaragua, which is, my neighbors. Paulina lived a few years in Colorado, which for her was a little bit of a culture shock as well. Mm-hmm. And then you moved to the whole other coast, which is a whole other culture shock in itself, because you're talking about a whole other land full of different Latinos, different cultures, not just Latinos, like everything. I feel like New York is a very big melting pot.
Well, yes. I mean, like, first of all, in Michigan, it's crazy. Well, here's the thing. Anywhere you go, when you bring up Tijuana, everyone says the same thing. It's like, oh my God, you're from Tijuana. Yeah. Wow, that's like dangerous. It's like, how are you alive? How are you alive? I'm like, oh my God.
You made it to 21?
Yeah. I remember, though, a guy I met at Michigan somehow had the chango surfo, la alcancía, from the border. I'm like, how did you get that? The surfing monkey.
Yeah.
Anyways, but a random thought. And so, but now, yes, anywhere I would go, and still to this day, even in Mexico, you're from Tijuana. Oh my God, you like that. Mm-hmm. But New York was very interesting because yes, either I was, I'm gonna say either. Everyone thought I was Colombian.
Really?
Colombian. No one ever. It's interesting, like, no one ever, like, when I would say I'm Mexican, like, they're kind of looked at me weird.
Sure?
You know?
Yeah, that's completely opposite.
Exactly. And so, New York, I love New York. I love it. I could go back any day. I couldn't live there anymore, honestly, just because of the weather.
Yeah.
But I just did, I got to say, I did not connect with that city. I mean, obviously LA is, it's, Mexico 2.0.
Yeah.
Simon. Yeah. So I love LA. Like, I truly love it. But New York, and I love it as well. But it's just like, it's just a different, to me, it's like a different planet, honestly. And with regards to that, like, say, Latinos or whatever, like, I mean, it's a whole different thing, which I love. Trust me, I love the culture and everything. Like, Colombia's all the Caribbean culture, pero, o sea, it's just, I mean, here, I'm from here,
It's a lot of energy.
But it's not your culture, so it's just harder to, like...
You feel like, at least I did, definitely felt like an outsider, but it was weird because it's like, oh, okay, it's Latinos, like I said, but not the same. But again, I miss it, I love it, but I'm glad where I'm at right now here in Southern California.
How long were you in New York for?
I was there 5 years.
Oh, okay.
5 years.
So you left your job. So you worked here at Telemundo, Televisa, all the things, and then you left. What'd you do in New York?
So I got to New York, and so I went out to New York because I wanted to try, like, to work in, like, just bigger projects. Here I was working in a lot of, in local media, right? So I wanted to work in kind of national, productions and whatnot. But here's the thing, like, even though I wanted to work in, like, say, film, when I got there, I just always made it about the money, right? Because you got to survive. Yeah. So it's understandable. It's like, well, I got to start just working in what I know, and I got to get a job right away, especially in a place like New York.
I was going to say, at the time, it was probably the most expensive city in the U.S.
At the time, yeah. And so I'm like, I got to survive, and it just get things going. So, of course, I started taking jobs in news. I actually started working in Telemundo over there. Okay. And so then I started doing like more news jobs, right? Still saying yes to the stuff that I did not really want to do, but they offered me money. Here's a check. I'll take it.
Oh, and it got you the experience too.
It got me experience. Yeah, no, it was great. I learned a lot, and eventually, I mean, the other thing was that I was always a staff worker here in San Diego. So I had a staff job for like 10 years, and then in New York, I became a freelancer. So that was in itself was like, and I guess always what I was scared of. Like I was very scared of just leaving my comfort zone. San Diego, because I always thought, all right, yeah, you have a staff job, you have your benefits or whatever, like that's what you're supposed to do, and that is how you live your life.
Yeah.
And then when I discovered like freelancing, I was like, oh my God, like this is what you could do this? Yeah. And now I haven't gone back to I guess I'll never say never, but I don't think I go back to a staff job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the freedom that this allows. I just, I can't, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And now, is it easy? No, absolutely not. But you could figure it out. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like when I was in New York, I figured it out. A chingadazos, like, I mean, like it was like, but that's how you learn. And so, and then I had a very successful career in New York. I mean, it got to a point where I was like I was turning down work, it was like, it was great. And then one day I just, all right, well, let's go to LA now. And the same thing. But here's the thing. I make the decision to go to LA. And I'm like, all right, yeah, man, I'm going to go to LA. If I can make it in New York, I can make it anywhere. Facts. Here I go. I'm going to just go to Joaquin LA and everyone's going to give me work. That was not the case.
Oh, no.
That was not the case. LA was extremely, extremely difficult. Like it was tough. It was tough. I mean.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. But I want to go back a little bit. Before you got into this whole industry, was filmmaking always plan A? Like when you were in high school, when you graduated, going to Michigan, what was the plan? Because I know we talked about it briefly before we were on the podcast, and we kind of talked about how, coming from a Latino culture, Latino background, it was kind of always like drilled in us, like tienes que ser un profesional. Tienes que ser un médico. You got to be a lawyer. You got to be something that's, I guess, they were more proud of what you were versus what you were proud of.
Yeah. So, well, that's a very good question. And so for me, yeah, I mean, I knew how much I loved being creative and telling stories and wanting to do film. Like, and again, I learned that in high school. Like, that's when it really hit me, where it's like, this is something I want to do like for the rest of my life. But it's tough to say it was a plan A because like, it was so ingrained in me to do something else. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't because you went to school for you started with something else, right?
Exactly.
Computer science.
Computer science. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What about in high school? Was it always that you knew you wanted to do something artsy and like your parents were like, no, tú tienes que hacer algo más? Or was it you just landed in computer science and you're like going through the book and what can I transfer into?
I guess, I landed in computer science, I guess, because I always loved technology. Like since I was a kid, I was the one that, I was always breaking things, like breaking my uncle's computers. And, they had, I remember like he had this, like, what was the Apple IIe, old school Macintosh, I would say, oh my God, like, it's like, and I would just break it, and or he had like, a lot of like, audio mixers. I mean, just gear, cameras. Yeah, I was there, just touch it, and break it.
So you were exposed to it from a young
the get go,
age,
yeah, because my grandpa and my uncle were very into photography, and so there was just always like cameras around the house and gear, So I was fascinated with being creative, and I guess through technology, I suppose, and so that's like, yeah, I mean, I think I spent a lot of time. I remember like spending a lot of summers like by myself as a kid, single mother, whatnot, and I would just spend. I don't know. I think everyone around me went to summer school. I guess I don't know. I was always alone, like my neighbors, And I don't know. And so I was always like doing like trying to find like ways, shoot things and I don't know, create stuff.
Your mind was working.
Yeah. My mind was always working. But no one ever The thing is, I'll say this: it's like from the very young age, I was told that you have to go to college. Like that was just that. Like that's what you do. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember like going. When I was very young, my uncle, he left like the house early and was out like in San Francisco, New York, and this and that, and went to Syracuse and all these things. And so I remember they took me to Yale University to like visit it, to say like this is where you're supposed to go, right? And so that was always kind of instilled in my head. And so I guess, but it wasn't like, okay, I go to Yale, like for example, to study film. Like it just film was like something that you just don't do, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess, no one ever said you had to be like necessarily like a lawyer or this and that, but you definitely weren't going to be out there doing films. Mm-hmm. Like that was just, going back to those days, I can't imagine like that was just not something you did, and so, yeah. And I think also our culture and whatnot had that influence, to saying like, you know what, again, this is not something that you necessarily do. That's not success or, you know, and also talking about success, I guess it's like, I suppose it's like always about like, it was always about, well, success equals money, which I don't think that's the case. I don't agree with that. I think I've discovered that over the years. Right. Mm-hmm. Me personally. And so yeah, it was always about, again, I bring up money a lot because I was really also, as I was trying to, as I was working and taking projects, it was always about the money. Mm-hmm. Like that, just pay me. Mm-hmm. And actually, see, I'm rambling.
No, that's fine.
You can cut me off anytime.
No. Well, no, you bring up success. I actually don't mean to cut you off, but you triggered something because I had it down in my notes where I had put like success and people's approval is like a drug. And you bring up the topic of money, and even in the podcast realm, it was like, when we started this journey of the podcast, I did it for the love of talking to people and getting to know their backstory. And as time has gone by, and we've started to collab with more people, we started to get noticed. Brand deals started to get in the talks. We got signed with Sonoro. So a lot of things have come into play where I kind of got lost.
In the sauce,
yeah. For lack of better words, I got lost in it because then I was like, now all I'm thinking about is money. What can bring us money? What can bring us the views? What can bring us the clicks? Versus actually putting my heart and soul into our actual end product. Where ultimately that's where the money comes from. It's an ever revolving door, but ultimately I kind of lost the view of what I wanted to do and what brought me happiness because of money.
I often have to reel him in.
Yeah, quite often. I think like once a week, she's like, hey, come back.
Take a couple steps back.
Yeah, and so you bring up that topic where it's like, then you start kind of saying yes to everything. And sometimes I get a lot of emails where it's like, oh, this brand wants to work with podcasters, and it has nothing to do with what our vision. And sometimes I'll send them to her. I was like, should I say yes? And she's like, no, this is some random brand that you have no idea what they're, just
like look for the value in it.
Yeah,
in my
just
opinion,
for the bag, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So when you brought that up, it just triggered a moment of like, I always or quite often have to get reeled back into reality where it's like, no, remember why you're doing this.
Absolutely. Look, for example, like I have a mentorship platform now. It's called Hollywood Editing Mentor. And a lot of the stuff that I bring up is this, right? Trying to kind of guide people to make them hopefully see, maybe make the right decisions, and guide them with this career. Not just like in film and like scripted television. It's like if you just want to be work as an editor, and make that a career. Because that is one thing for many years. I mean, like I'll say like 15 years. Where I had no direction, no focus. I was just trying things, saying yes again to just a paycheck and whatnot. I didn't have goals. Even when I thought like, yeah, like it's easy to say like I want to work in film, mm-hmm. But it's like, all right, why do you want to work there, right? What is your purpose? Like, why do you want to do that, right? Really understanding that. I think that's what really drives you. That's the engine that'll get you to first of all take action, and then also keep you on that path because. That path is hard. It's hard. Mm-hmm. And trust me, I wanted to quit many times. Say trying to make my way to work in film, for example, working in Hollywood. I mean, I had like panic attacks in the freeway. I mean, I was like, this is not gonna happen. Like, I'm done. I'm done. But it's like, what do you want to do? Like, why do you want to do the why? That's the why do you want to do this, right? And so that is what just kind of kept the engine going. And so, but going back to the money thing, I remember meeting Cameron Crowe. Cameron Crowe, almost famous, won an Oscar, and Jerry Maguire, and I met him in 2009 because I was doing a project for, I think, San Diego City College. He went there, actually. He was a student there at some point. They were doing like his anniversary video. I went up there to shoot the interview to LA, and I meet him, and then and he's like, whatever, great guy. And I'm like, hey, so any advice for someone that wants to work in film? Like, any advice? He's like, don't make it about the money. Like, what? He's like, yeah, don't make it about the money. Like, the money will come later. Like, focus on getting experience, meeting the right people, learning the craft. And okay, but at that time, this was 2009. It didn't register. Like, I was just not in that headspace. I was
after the depression.
Yeah, seriously.
No, yeah, exactly. And I was like in my desmadre phase, you know. It's like, and then so whatever, like, I want to avoid saying cut to because that's anyway, you jump to 2017 and I meet this other editor, Joy McMillan, who at that time was doing her Oscar campaign for Moonlight. And the same thing, and it's like, African American editor. I was like, I really love your story. Like, same thing, the struggles and how you got to where you are, blah blah. And so, any advice for like someone that wants to work in this? Like, yeah, don't make it about the money. And I'm
There's
like,
two.
It's like a common
okay,
theme.
Simon. Yeah. And then it was that's when, and then when I didn't make it about the money, what was like the end goal and really, again, getting to know people and understanding like, all right, this is, having that focus to say like, this is now what I'm going down this path. That's what I'm doing. Nada que acá documentaries y que, whatever commercials and that's like, all right, film and go straight. Blinders, vámonos. And that's when things started to happen finally. But it took me, again, like 15 years to like really understand it.
Yeah.
Like trial and error. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you have to go through those experiences to really figure it out, because what if you would have liked the commercial and then that would have been like, okay, this is what I want to do, or the, documentaries or.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no regrets, nothing. I mean, like that was what it was meant to happen. That was my journey. And again, like everything that have learned now, I apply to what I do now. So it needed to happen when it needed to happen. That's fine. But I think it's I talk a lot about mentorship. I have my own mentorship platform. I think that's so important. It's like, looking up to people, basically that are doing the stuff that you want to do and that you look up to and asking questions and seeking advice and having goals, like knowing eventually. I think it's good to experiment and try things and play around. I mean, figure it out. I think eventually you have to do like pick that path and say, right, this is what I'm doing. Like I think that's very important. And for me, it took me a while, but again, I figured it out eventually, so I'm happy.
At what point did you find that like grounding point? Because you said it took you a while.
Well, I gotta say, we
got time.
It's like loaded question.
I love this.
Send me the Venmo request later.
No, you're asking, and I love this because you're asking the deep questions, and for me, and I have the answer for the one at the end. And
that's my favorite one.
and for me was leaving here. Like that's the thing. When I say like, look. When I say I went through my desmadre phase, yes, I did. I probably will do. Está bien, whatever.
Yeah.
To me, it took me like literally 10 years to pick up and leave. I always had, my uncle lived out in the East Coast in Jersey, New York, and I would always go visit him like literally once a year, and I was like, oh, fuck, New York, like this is like, oh, I love this, but I was always like afraid to make that leap, right? I was doubting myself, like I know I'm from here, like what am I gonna do in New York, or I was just simply afraid to make that jump to like quit my job. It was literally fear of risking things, and but also a big part of it was getting. I knew I needed to get away from my circle here. Like it just was not doing anything good for me. Like that is the truth. And it wasn't until that happened. And trust me, when I remember waking up, because I remember I went to I did it all wrong. I went to New York, and then from there went to Bangkok. Opposite. I mean, totally wrong plan, bad planning. But I remember waking up in New York, and then like that morning going to Bangkok, and I just wake up and I'm terrified. Like, what am I doing? I just quit my job. I have no job right now. I'm going to Bangkok, Thailand. What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. And I go to Thailand, and I have the most amazing time. I met people who were doing the exact same thing that I was doing. I had the same stories and experiences. We're trying to get away from something. Mm-hmm. I was, for sure. I was running away. And that was the best decision ever. As the best decision ever. And then when I got back to New York, I was living like in my uncle's basement. I had nothing, and I was the happiest I had ever been. But I felt free. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of starting all over again. And I guess, to answer that question, I think it's like that's when it really, things started to click, because it was a process. Mm-hmm. I think things are still clicking now, And that was 12 years ago or more. But that was, I think, the moment. That's when the second kind of phase of my life really, really started, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Uh-huh.
Well, you kind of have to get away from it all. Paulina and I have had this conversation plenty of times, and this is why I really like having conversations with people that kind of live the same similar life. Like, shout out to Danny Cuadras, the border kid life, you could say, right? Where we grew up in San Diego, but maybe we partied really hard in Tijuana, and we started getting, associated with different crowds and different people.
Then you get comfortable.
And then you get comfortable, and you get to a certain age where you're like, okay, what am I doing with my life? I'm 22 and I'm still hitting the club, and I got nothing going for myself. I'm still, maybe, I don't know, like, por ejemplo, por decir, at that point in time, just putting myself in this example, I was using my dad's credit card. I was, hijo de papi type of deal. So what am I doing? What do I got going for myself? And at that point, I kind of had to have a switch in my head too, where I was like, ponte las pilas. Do something with your life. Get away from this crowd. Go experience other things. Go experience other people. I never left San Diego, and that's probably a decision that I will always regret. Only because at the time when I was at that age, there was a lot of things going on in my family where I really feared leaving the house. I didn't want to leave the house. There was a lot of things going on where I had that attachment, and I was like, si me voy, algo va a pasar. But to this day, I really regret not going out and like experiencing other things.
Well, yeah. Well, that was the one thing that pushed me to leave to New York. Mm-hmm. Was that I honestly just did not want to. I didn't want to see down the line. I was like, "Fuck, I never did it." That's the truth. I remember being at work. I was working for Channel 10 here in San Diego, and it was close to like my last day, and this one guy, one of the bosses there, comes in to my office. He's like, just so you know, man, you've made the right decision. Like, I guess he at some point maybe did the same thing or whatever. He's like, you're right. And no one else told me that. The thing is, like, no one understood it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, I said, you don't do this, right? And I think also that's part of it too, why I wouldn't leave. There was also that influence from people like, this is going to be a long ass episode. Even like, look, getting away, again, I'm talking about like getting away and from a certain, your circle or making changes. Mm-hmm. That's not easy. That is not. There's these external forces that want to keep you in there, and so I battled with that for many years. Right? I was like, no, man, I can't leave. I can't leave this. That's
there's FOMO.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, the fear of missing out.
I was like, I can't leave here, and what are they gonna think of me? Like I said, it's just now saying it is crazy. But at that time, yeah, for many years, just like, what? No, man, it's not. You don't do this. You're loyal to your, we'll say friends, loosely, and it's like, and not thinking about necessarily you. Mm-hmm. Like, what are your goals? What do you want to do with your life? Huh? And so I think, kind of jumping ahead, it's like that's what I've been learning so far, is like having that self-love, and doing things for you. O sea, and I think everyone should really focus on like what matters to you. Y la chingada todo el mundo lo demás. Yeah. I mean, it is true. I mean, I really, that gets me really worked up, because that's something that I really battled with for many, many years. But I go back to that time when I left to New York. That was like that, just kind of finally letting go of that. And that was the start of it. And I just say start of it because that, again, that has been a journey in itself from then on to now. O sea, has been many more stories and other experiences, but
we got time. Yeah. I got nothing to do.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it was just like that. It took that, and that was very it was very hard. It was very hard.
Yeah. No, I can kind of, to an extent, kind of feel what you're saying, because I was in nursing school for like the longest time, but only because my parents were like pushing me. It's like, you have to do this. You have to be a professional. Like with the conversation we were having earlier. And at one point, I was just sitting there. I was still in nursing school. At the time, I had my licenses to practice as a nurse assistant. And I was like, I'm unhappy. I am truly unhappy. And the only reason I am here is because I want to make my mom happy. And then at that moment, that's the moment where it clicked. And I was like, if my mom, and at the same time, it was funny because I was also working in a nursing home taking care of old people. And at that point, I was like, hopefully everything goes the way it's supposed to in life. And I am the one that's put to my parents to rest. But at the end of it, I'm the one that's stuck with the decision of what I did with my life. And if I'm unhappy right now, 10 years, 5 years, even 3 years down the road, what? Then I'm just doing this just for the paycheck, And at that point, that's when my switch happened. I was like, I got to drop out.
Don't make it about the money.
Yeah, I was thinking about the money. I made my parents really unhappy. It's been a long road, and we've struggled. There's been times where I've been paycheck to paycheck. There's been times where I wasn't paycheck to paycheck. But ultimately, I'm happy. And at the end of the day, I think that's what life should be about. We glorify paychecks. We glorify all these artists with huge mansions and elaborate cars and these crazy lifestyles. But at the end of the day, you see all these artists and they're committing suicide. Why? Because they weren't happy. So what is the end goal? Is the end goal having the bag, or is the end goal being happy?
When you say that, my first thing that came to my mind is Anthony Bourdain.
Oh,
honestly,
the GOAT.
That's. And have you guys seen the documentary?
Yeah.
Okay, hope so.
Yeah. We're big fans of this household.
Actually, I have this thing where if I could have dinner with anybody dead or alive, Anthony Bourdain is my number one.
Yeah, no, I think I wanted to be Anthony Bourdain. Like I actually you can find the videos still out there. Me kind of doing my food thing. I gotta take those down. Yeah. But yeah, no, exactly. It's like I was same thing. I was not happy. Like I was just that was it. Like I was not happy, and for many years, yeah, I was just kind of like. I remember like being in New York and being quite. And I appreciate it again. Everyone who's ever listening, I loved everything I've done, but there was a specific projects that I was like, man, I cannot. I think when you get to that point where you wake up every day and you're like, you dread going to work. Yeah, that's it. You're done.
We just had that conversation on last week's podcast where it was like, you have your job and then you have your career. But then when your career starts becoming your job, that's when you're like, well, what am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. And that's when that's I think also like that moment, because I was making good money, and that's when I realized you can't pay me enough to be happy. Like it's just not they don't go hand in hand. Yeah. I don't think so. And so and now to me, like for example, like being able to just have that. I'm not rich, or anything, but it's like just having that kind of freedom to take whatever creative project you want. Yeah. You can hold out, right? And working on something as cool as Griselda, like that, to me, it's like, that's a dream project. So it's like, for me, it's like, I already made it. I was like, it's amazing. That's literally what I've dreamed of doing. So, I don't tie it to money. Like that's just, that's.
Well, also, it also goes back to like what you classify as richness.
Oh, exactly.
Some people will tie it to money. Some people will tie it to other things that aren't tangible or whatever it is. Sorry, excuse me. My dad lately, well, whenever he's mad, he's always like, "Te voy a quitar de la herencia," and then and I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I mean, he says it jokingly because I know my dad, but he says it jokingly. Te voy a quitar la herencia, but to me, it's like, déjaselo todo a mis sobrinas. Like, I don't care. Like, at this point in life, I would be very happy tending to some cows and living on a farm way off with no neighbors and just talking to people, just doing this, talking to people, getting to know people, their experiences in life, and literally like not really giving a fuck about money.
I agree. Look, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I do think, obviously, I'm not going to be out here saying like, money sucks. No.
Yeah. Of course you need it. Yeah.
We attract money into this home.
No, yeah. We're manifesting money, but pay my bills, but also, let me be happy too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a fine line. There's a fine line.
Exactly. I guess it can't. I don't think has to be like the driving force,
right?
Yeah. And I do think, as it was told to me, in 2 occasions. Yeah, I do think like the money will come later. I think if you focus on like just kind of put your energy into what you love and what you connect with, right? Yeah. Because, I go back to like thinking, I just can't imagine myself right now going and I work hard to not go back to just doing stuff that I don't feel passionate about. That's not the life that I want to live. Honestly, that's torture to me. Honestly, honestly.
Yeah, but it all ties down, and there's always the common theme of being happy. And then going back to my roots in nursing, a lot of the things that drove me to start Divia con Huevos or the brand was a lot of the conversations that I used to have in the nursing homes, where there was just so much regret in one place. And I love having conversations with people. And at that moment in time, I would open up to the people who I was taking care of. I mean, of course, I'm with them like 12 to 15 hours a day. Like, it was hard not to. And a lot of the common themes, a lot of the common conversations was like, "Ay, mijo, I wish I could have done this with my life. I should have done this. Mm-hmm. I really wanted to be a dancer, but, I needed to do this. Or I got married at a really young age and, that stopped me or that limited me from living the life that I really wanted to do." And I was like, why are we limiting ourselves? Why are we keeping ourselves from ultimately being happy? Yes, of course, we need the money. I'm not saying we don't need money and fuck money and everything. We need the money to survive, obviously. Sí. But is that, like you said, is that really my driving force? Or why should that be our driving force? That you should ultimately do something that brings you happiness. Full circle moment, whatever is going to bring you happiness will in turn eventually bring you money.
Exactly. Yeah. No, yeah. And I mean, because sure. So when I kind of like started to kind of revamp my resume and like, so then I went off and like worked on like, low budget, like, indie feature films and whatnot, where I could not pay my rent, But again, I was like, man, I'm making films, man. This is great, man. I don't know if I'm gonna survive, but it's fun for now, I guess. Like, this is great. Like, I was happy.
Yeah.
And then things started to happen. Like, things started to happen. And then I got my big break on Narcos Mexico. And then now I'm making a career, like, in what I've always wanted to do. Literally, like, that was my dream.
From that conversation that you had with your grandma to your big break with working with the production and with Narcos, how long was that trajectory?
Ooh, I mean, 17, 18 years.
Okay. Uh-huh, yeah. And that whole time you were just like, and throughout those 17 and 18 years, we talked about like the self-doubt. And you knew your end goal was obviously getting into film. But what else was your driving force? Because, I mean, obviously you're down and you're, at your lowest point sometimes. But what else is your driving force?
I guess, I wanted, stop with the good questions, man. Jesus Christ. You're making me think too much. No, I guess, I always wanted to, I always wanted to have a family and have a career that I loved and something I could just keep doing on till I guess I retire, you know, and having that freedom to, I mean, I love traveling, you know, and so that as well, like just have the freedom to travel and experience, have new experiences, you know, and so. But I guess I wanted to be just doing something that I love, that I connected with, you know. In this case, it was really I knew it from the get-go was that I wanted to make films, like that's because really filmmaking is like it's storytelling. I mean, you're telling stories. I love telling stories. Like and the same thing as you is like I could talk forever, like you know, and hear stories. I like to hear stories. Probably same thing as you, and so. That's what I just wanted to do. That was eventually when I learned though, really understanding my why. Like, why is it that you want to do this? Why do you want to work in this? Okay, sure. Like, I want to work with these type of people, these creatives. I want to, for example, like very specific. Like, I want to work union projects in Hollywood because they're union, right? I want that, I guess, certain protection and, you know, and I want to work on this type of like caliber projects and whatnot, right? So really, really specific as to saying like, what do you want and why do you want it, right? And I guess, I mean, really thinking about it, it's like because I want to wake up every morning and be like excited about like what I'm doing today. In this case, going to work. I think for me, honestly, career, like it still continues to be. It's very important to me. Like I guess that's just from a young age. Always was taught that as far as like just. Like the working and career, like that's just something that I just value a lot, and I really put a lot of effort into it, you know. And so again, knowing how much energy and effort it requires, I wanted to make sure that it was something that I just truly love, you know. But I discovered that like over time, like again, going back to you know when I first started out, it wasn't about that. It was just like kind of like, all right, you just this is success. You just get a paycheck and then you're supposed to just kind of like maybe I don't know buy a house or like you know whatever. I mean, which is fine. I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, it's just not what I decided eventually to do. And trust me, like even you know you bring up the whole marriage thing and you know, that's we could definitely go down that road. But I'm saying like, you know, even like, look, I waited, I got married, you know, when I was 42, you know, like because I just really made, say my career, my focus. Like I knew that this is what I wanted to get, you know, nailed down first before I took that leap, you know. Even the same conversation now with, you know, having kids. Like, do we want to have kids? I don't know. That's
a whole other podcast
you
in
know
itself.
What I'm saying? But I think in general, what I'm saying is like, and to each their own, right? But I'm just saying it's like I think it's important for people to really like have these conversations, like for us to feel like, especially in our culture, that's the thing in our culture, to really be comfortable with having these conversations and like being open about it and making the right decisions for you and not for anyone else.
It's creating that safe space. You know, I think my suegra, shout out my suegra, but she really does a really good job at creating a safe space as far as coming to her and like being like, man, I really don't feel comfortable doing this. Or, you know, me and her joke.
Now.
Yeah. My relationship with my suegra is actually really nice. You know, I can be very open. I mean, and I have a really open relationship with my family too, like my dad and my mom now. I think before, that wasn't the idea. That was I think a lot of my issues are derived from not being able to be open, not being able to be expressive. It was always not being able to be you. Yeah, not being able to be me. It was always like, esta es mi casa y aquí mando yo y se va a hacer lo que yo diga type of deal. And it was never like, but it was like, pero qué? You know, it was, yeah.
Well, it really sounds like at the end of the day, what your driving force actually was yourself, you know, and like the kind of future that you wanted to give yourself. And of course, like taking other people into consideration and like your future wife and all the things at the time. But it sounds to me like you really figured out what you wanted and you worked for that.
That's a very good point. And yeah, I think you're right. It's like, and yes, I think it was like that exploring that journey to really discovering myself, and because I always felt held back by, you know, again, society, family, whatever, culture, and it has been a journey of self-discovery. Yeah, honestly, it took a while, but like, yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, I remember like, you know, and you know, I remember there was things, and again, it's you know, my mom had her way of raising me and whatnot, you know, but it's like there was things that were like done, I guess, where it was like you couldn't express yourself, be really who you were, like, and not only with say my mom, but I'm saying like I think in general, like with again this community's culture, like it's just like you're not allowed to, if you kind of step out of that comfort zone or whatever, like you're seen as the weirdo, and okay, I mean, it's like
the black sheep,
and so. And I was kind of always kind of like at the borderline, like kind of like here and there, like I was like really always, because I was always the creative person, right? And kind of trying to step out of that kind of comfort zone, but again, always held back. At some point I was always held back, not being who I really was. And you're completely right. It's like, I think this has been just a journey of just self-exploration, honestly. Yeah.
And I think those like little things that you did, like, well, not little, like moving to New York or, you know, quitting. It kind of like put you on on survival mode. Like, all right, I put myself in this situation. What do I got to do to, you know, survive, you know, move on to the next step, or, you know, continue to reach what I want to, my goals pretty much, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, going back to the New York thing, like it literally took me 10 years, like to take that leap. And I remember I went to, again, visit my uncle in New York one summer. Oh, no, actually it was in October, my favorite time of the month, or my favorite time of the year in New York. And we were in Bryant Park, I remember. And he's like, all right, man, so when are you going to do it? Like, when are you going to do it? And I'm just sitting there. I remember having a beer, you know, and it was like the perfect October day, fall day. And I'm like, all right, yeah. Like, yeah, when are you going to do it? And so I go back and I start formulating a plan to. I mean, I just didn't like go back. I'm quitting my job. I'm leaving. Like I don't encourage that, right? It's like, all right, think about plans. Yeah. So I know, like, okay, save money. There was a whole thing behind it, right?
Okay.
But I mean, like, yeah, I guess I discovered that when I got to New York. That's the thing. It's like when I got to New York and living in a basement and, like, you know, not having any context, nothing. That's when you switch into survival mode. Yeah. And then that's when you discover things about yourself that you didn't know you were capable of. Mm-hmm. And that's what pushed me, like, to, again, like, just take risks. And then I think as you do it, when you finally make that jump and then you land and you're like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I didn't die. Like, I'm okay. Like, oh, wait a minute, this is okay. And so then you're just conditioned now to just keep doing it over and over, because you'll know you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had your Vive con Huevos moment. Mm-hmm. That's what you had.
He did.
Yeah. No, and you know what? And kind of going back to what you're saying, like, I think also I discovered that we were talking about like marathons. My brother, you know, gets real obsessive about them. Yeah. I'm not as obsessive.
Iron Man over here.
I'm like, I like running them, but, like, you know, but, you know, I think also through these, like, I guess challenging myself physically, I also like I met a personal trainer I remember in LA who I worked with for a while, and like I discovered a lot about myself through like just really, I mean, like really pushing myself to like discovering like physically like things I didn't know was capable of. Mm-hmm. And so and it just kind of, I don't know, for me at least, it like woke me up and saying, wow, man, like, I mean, and it was a time when I got to LA when I was still trying to break into the film industry. And then when I guess you learn, like, again, you're capable. I think we're all capable of so much. I think literally we all have it in us to achieve so much. Mm-hmm. And it just has to be kind of untapped, unlocked. Yep.
Yeah.
And at least for me, it was like through that, through like kind of, you know, going out there, you know, backpacking in Southeast Asia, moving to New York, no job, working with this trainer who physically like pushed me to like my limits. I mean, at least that's where my ways to discovering that, you know.
Well, you took a lot of risks along the way, you know, and like those risks just came back and they worked out for you, you know? Yeah. Or you made it work for yourself in reality, but.
Yeah. And I tell people, you know what, everyone's journey is different. You know, it's like, you know, through my students, I say, you know what, like I'm saying this, I'm providing maybe this advice or these stories, but you got to really focus on what works for you, right? Because everyone is different, right? Just sure, listen to me, listen to other guests on my podcast, their journeys, their challenges, how they overcame challenges. But in the end, you got to figure out, what works for you.
Yeah.
Don't just be like, all right, there's the formula. There you go. No, it doesn't work that way.
Do the same thing.
Move
to New York.
No.
Live in a basement.
Move New York. Go backpacking.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, I like what you said, that everyone's journey is different, because we do, as of lately, we've been forming this podcast community. And we all kind of bounce ideas off of each other, like what works for you, what hasn't worked for you, and things like that. But there's no one way of doing. There's no one correct way. What could work for me and our demographic and our listeners is completely different. What's going to work for even you on your podcast and your demographic and your listeners versus someone who's in LA and their listeners and who they're bringing in. Yeah. And everyone's journey is just completely different. And then what was difficult for me was enjoying that journey. I was so focused going back to the end goal that I wasn't enjoying the little small victories. I wasn't enjoying we finally hit 50 listeners. We finally hit 100 subscribers. We finally hit 100 or like a 1K or whatever it is. I wasn't letting myself enjoy those things. I was always on like, all right, bet, what's next though? And going back to the whole John, my ADHD brain is like on like wired mode right now. But I had like all these thoughts going on, but it's like just enjoying and embracing that journey. I think that's ultimately what I wanted to say, is like enjoying that journey. Like you said, everyone has their own, but just focusing on the end goal, but also giving yourselves the ability to enjoy the small wins.
Well, yeah, I love that because, I something I talk about or share with my students a lot is like focusing also on those small wins, right? Baby steps. I think a lot of people are just focused on kind of like the end goal. It's like, yeah, so I didn't get there. It's like, no, wait, just take. It's funny you mentioned that because actually, like, I think today, when was it? Like, I was like, wow, it's something ridiculous. Like, I don't know, man. What was it? Like, I got like extra fries, like at my whatever kebab order.
You posted that earlier. It looked really fucking bomb.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. It was like a sword.
Yeah,
it's
huge.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is great. Like I don't know. I think it's just like, well, it's crazy, right? It's ridiculous, but it's like, well, all right, that's a win, you know?
Yeah. Well, I was, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was listening to a podcast this morning and they talk about that, how like when you start to become grateful for the smallest of things just start to happen for you because you're not expecting these grand gestures or these grand things. Like you're just grateful that like you got the extra fries, or like Mario gets free food all the time and I'm very grateful for that. But like if you're grateful for the small things, like the bigger things will come.
That man, you guys bring up the best points. I love this podcast. This is amazing because so last week, he's a friend. I mean, I don't like using the word assistant because it's more than that. It's like my friend Chris Kavanaugh, shout out to him, who we work together on Griselda. We're doing this. We're going through like our Emmy campaign at the moment, and so we recorded this video. And we go into this conversation about being grateful, and I'll give credit to him because he brought it up. But I completely agree because I think it's important to show it. That's the thing, and I think also when part of like say how I got was able to get to this point, say to work on these types of projects and whatnot, I think is also showing people that I was just grateful for the opportunity to be where I was. Like I truly like it wasn't bullshit. Like it was like you could tell like this guy like really wants to. Like, he loves this. Like he wants to be here. Because I think you can. That's the thing when I tell people like I'm like I'll say to my students, it's like you can people can tell when you're bullshitting someone. Yeah. Like you can and so. I think when you really connect with something, when you really feel in your heart, you're passionate about it, it's just going to come out. It's just going to come out naturally, right? And so, but I think it is important more than anything is to express that, that, telling people, I'm grateful for this. Like, I appreciate it and thank you. And like, I'm genuinely excited. So, no, I really, really, really appreciate that and love that.
Yeah. Jesus.
I know, so much good information.
So many questions, so many things just going into my brain right now. I don't think we have enough time.
Screw my therapy sessions, man. I'm gonna cancel that next week.
Like I said,
You can come
men
here.
don't go to therapy. We start podcasts.
I love that.
I call bullshit.
Yeah, but I do. She still wants me to go. This is my therapy. What better therapist than you, baby?
I'm not your therapist. I am your fiance.
Yeah, but it's free.
No, you need a friend for that.
But I do want to start diving into like your road to Griselda and Netflix and all of that. But before that, let's take a quick break. Yes. All right, Jesus, pause.
All right. And we're back.
And we're back.
I'm like, oh, tell me about tech stuff.
Yeah, we can. That's a whole other podcast. I think we found our first reoccurring guest. But guys, if you had made it this far, make sure to like, subscribe, share the content. Check out Joaquin's page. He has a lot of great material. Also, his podcast, Hollywood Editing Mentor. I knew I was missing a word somewhere.
Trust me, everyone. That is people always get that wrong.
Yeah. Fuck.
All right, well, let's not be them.
It's like when I came up with the name. I like simple things because I was like, oh, let's make this a cool name and write down ideas. I'm like, no, this is a thing about Hollywood and editing and the mentorship, right? Yeah. But I don't know why it's like people switched like the editing and the mentor. I was like, okay, Hollywood.
I just omitted one completely. It's like I knew I'm missing a word. I don't know where it's at though.
It's all right. No, it's all right.
But you know what? I think we were having a good conversation during the pause. And I do really want to get into you working with Griselda and Netflix and Narcos Mexico and kind of that road. But also prior to you landing that opportunity, you said, or you've mentioned a lot of times that you had to do a lot of inner work. Mm-hmm. A lot of that inner work also, I mean, I've been struggling a lot with a lot of the inner work and a lot of my healing. I've been tapping into a lot of like my spirituality and energies and when I mean spirituality, because I know my dad's gonna get on my case when he hears that. Not being close to, I guess, in this case, and this entity is God, but I guess more of like the spiritual side of like being in tune with like the earth and like spirit, all the angel numbers and crystals and self-healing and being more self-aware. Are you spiritual like that? Like, or do you? Because I know that kind of also kind of sometimes goes hand in hand with healing.
Oh, very, yeah. No, very, very. But it was something that I kind of was trying to push away for my entire life, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I guess, discovered spirituality and just in general, I guess, I'm going to say like wellness and self-help. I mean, like just all that, right? Like maybe I'm using a lot of like, the keywords, or like trending words or whatever. But it's like, but no, look, it really changed my life, honestly. And it was stuff that, even talking about like therapy and whatnot, things that I just always like, no, man, that's not for me and this and that. I don't want to, do that or maybe really what it was like, I didn't want to probably discover things about myself, honestly. And, but it wasn't until I kind of started kind of being more spiritual, and really leaning into being present, and really understanding myself and that self-love, and honestly, that has been a game changer. And all these concepts, right? I think I can see the transformation. Like I really actually go back and think about back a couple of years. It hasn't been that long, and seeing where things just started to shift. And then, but you know what? Eventually, though, it was also kind of hitting that. You have your, I think not everyone, but I think you have your rock bottom phase, and then that's when you hopefully make a change, and decide, all right, this is now what I should be doing things differently, that's when it happened for me for sure.
Do you feel like a lot of, because I know you mentioned like running away. Quite literally running away from your issues when you moved to like New York and moving away for college. Did that stem a lot from what was going on at home, and like how has that helped you become the person that you are now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was from, a lot of my upbringing, things from home, things that, like right now, I'm still even, it's interesting because now it's like I'm barely talking about this stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It has always been a challenge for me to bring this up. And it's, you know, and actually, like I was saying, like I'm an open book. Like I love, like I have never had. This one thing I'll say is like my entire life I've never been like I never held back. I'm very open. Like I've always been open, right? But I guess it's like even though I was always very expressive and whatnot. But I guess I never did kind of like that self-healing and the work. I was always trying to avoid something, or maybe I just simply didn't understand maybe what I was necessarily looking to heal or why things were happening. I think there was a lot of, I'm rambling again, but I think it's a lot of also like, there was probably like a lot of guilt involved. And I guess that stems from like thinking that you're supposed to do things a certain way, especially, I'll go back to this, I always bring up this culture, and look, I love our culture. Like, trust me, nothing wrong with it. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with it.
I felt the butt coming. I'm gonna let him write this out.
No, exactly. We're not gonna go down that route, but I'll say I love it, right? Yeah. But yeah, man, I mean, I think eventually, you know, kind of going back to like just kind of doing things for yourself. Like, I mean, like, and I think I didn't do that for many years. Like, I just always looking to get like validation from someone. Mm-hmm. I've always felt like I needed that, specifically, I guess, from my family, maybe my partners, you know, like it just like always like needing that validation for whatever reason. You can ask my therapist about that. But I'm saying like, you know, it was always that. And it's like now making this kind of shift to saying like, all right, like now really understanding like loving yourself, right? Or myself. And just doing things for me. And also kind of saying, I don't give a fuck. Like I was saying, like, oh, that's the truth. Like it's like, it's really about what people think. I mean, like it's kind of, man, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, and actually that was a big topic today of discussion, at my session, like that, you know, kind of that fine line with saying kind of, you know, fuck everything versus like, well, sure, but you know, don't take it to the extreme. Like there has to be like some boundary there, you know? But I think you kind of have to, man, and really focus on yourself.
Yeah.
And it starts with it starts with you, honestly. Like I really do think it starts with us. I'll say that. Mm-hmm. You know,
how has that affected you choosing a partner? Oh. So I could say, I know, like yo, fuck Netflix right now, bro. I think, and I bring this up only because when Pao and I started dating, I was on this journey of like kind of self-healing, self-discovery. It's kind of like yourself, right? That also came with a lot of regurgitation of past traumas, being open with my partner about like, hey, this is why I am the way I am. Maybe this is why I have a wall up, and let's break this down. Obviously, Paulina was there for a big part of it, and she's helped me tear down a lot of my walls or bring down those walls, I could say. A lot of it was her guiding me through it, but a lot of the heavy work, a lot of that grunt work, I had to do by myself. Right? She could only do so much for me. I also didn't want to put a lot of pressure on her because I knew I couldn't have her as my crutch. Mm-hmm. She's my partner, not my crutch. And a lot of why I chose her to be, I mean, now she's my fiance. We've been together 5 years. We're living together. And a lot of the part of why I fell in love with her was because she helped me through that journey versus before you mentioned other partners wouldn't. Or maybe I didn't feel comfortable confiding in them. And now you're happily married. You've been married for how many years now?
2 years.
2 years. You got that right.
No, yes, man. Look, I'll just the kind of simple explanation is, I had a thing for falling for toxic or going to toxic relationships for
Ignoring the red flags.
Yeah, man. I mean, for the majority of my life, honestly. And I guess it's like, man, I guess hitting rock bottom, and then finally kind of having those conversations with yourself, with your therapist, and really exploring like why did you make those choices, right? Really understanding that that's a process in itself. And for me, it was like really kind of seeing like why was I making, why was I leaning into choosing to be with these women, and it's like for so many years. And you're just kind of like repeating a pattern, man. I think, I'm not certified or whatever to go down this path and have this conversation, maybe. But I mean, you're just obviously you're mimicking something maybe from your obviously your childhood, in this case with your mom, probably, right?
Yeah.
That eventually you're like, okay, the simple answer is like, all right, enough. Like, and I'm not gonna be repeating the cycle. Like, but again, it goes back to like self-love. It's like I need to, like, first of all, think about me, because I think I was really trying to save people. Honestly, that's part of it. Honestly, thinking that I could save people for whatever reason, and that's impossible. I mean, you can't do that. I just kind of caught in the cycle, and eventually broke out of it, and really lean into like now really acknowledging, I guess having that also that self-respect and really loving myself. And that, that's the thing. It's like, yes, when that happens, when that happened, of course I meet my wife, which we reconnected. We actually, okay, damn it.
I was going to ask you the love story.
So here's the thing. It goes with what you're saying. So I met my now wife, back in 12 years ago. We met through one of my coworkers introduced us, and so again, I was used to being around toxic women, honestly, la neta, and so she was the opposite. And what did I think? Oh, that's boring. This sucks. Like, this is not exciting, right? And so, yeah, he kind of, dragged her along and this and that. Nothing happened. I went to New York. She went to Barcelona. We sit in touch. And then I would be like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go visit you. It is funny because we actually recently looked up our Facebook chat history.
Oh, right.
And it's all right, look at this. And then it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go visit you. Yeah, I'm going to Barcelona. Okay. And she was like, all right, I'll see you in Barcelona. A month later, I'm trying to figure things out. But I'll go next month. Okay. Hasta que, ¿sabes qué? Ya no vengas. Ya forget it. Ya se cansó. Y ya, history, deleted. And so whatever. I didn't talk to her for 10 years.
Wow.
And so I'm in, well, now we're going to go deep into this. And so I'm in LA. So the pandemic hits. I'm living with someone in LA. We break up, whatever. And then I go back to Tijuana, right? It's the pandemic. I go back with my parents and just trying to see all right, what am I gonna do now, right? And no, I'm not working, and other stuff happening, and so I turned into the dating apps. I had never done that, and so Bumble, we match on Bumble. It's like, oh, Charlene. I'm like, oh my God, it's been 10 years. And I remember I always liked her. Like I always, honestly, in those 10 years, I thought about her. I would stalk her sometimes, But it was
like one normally does.
Yeah. But it's like,
what are you up to?
Yeah, but it was like always like, oh yeah, she's like too muy buena. She's too good. I don't. That's not what I. Maybe now thinking about it, it's like maybe I don't deserve that. I don't know. Whatever. That's a deeper conversation.
I think it goes back to the whole self-love.
Self-love.
Yeah.
And so whatever. So now, and we're married now, right? But I, I think that it was like when I understood that kind of self-love. That led to, meeting her and getting married and having other success like in my career. Things just kind of opened up,
I was going to ask you that. Do you think you accepting now that your journey to self-love, you reconnected with your now wife, did all of that kind of intertwine with you getting the opportunity to working with now Narcos Mexico and Griselda? Was that kind of like within the same time frame? Or did like one thing happen and then kind of like leapfrogged?
Well, it's interesting because I think when I left that past relationship that's I think where the career kind of took off. I guess so. Yeah. I mean like that. So not necessarily the time I met my wife, but like when I left that that life.
Yeah. I think that's what I meant. Like letting go of like that toxicity in your life. Like what was drawing you into like a certain life, but also you letting go of that life. Yeah. Kind of like that journey of self-love, self-reflection,
Well, that was it. That was when I went kind of down that route, and really, again, that's when I started kind of going to therapy and I'm reading a lot of books. I mean, like meditating. I always, not always, but I mean, like I really focus a lot on my health. Like, I mean, I just, as far as like exercising and eating healthy, and at least I try to anyways. Yeah.
Health as well.
We all try to.
We try, I mean, I'm saying like all these things I think contribute to that, things that I certainly did not do in the past, but having now kind of transforming now or shifting to this new life. Yeah. I mean, that's when things I think kind of really started happening for sure.
Do you think without you having that time of self-reflection, do you think that would have, let's say you would have gone into you working in Narcos Mexico and Griselda and you were still in that old mindset, do you think that would have hindered your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, hell yeah. No, I'm like, hell yeah. No, yeah. Because I again, well, no, look, my Charlene, my wife, extremely supportive. I mean, like it's crazy. I mean, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's like
shout out Charlene.
Yeah,
I'll see you.
Saludos. Te amo. Sorry. She's like, oh, qué seco.
I love that.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Yeah, oh yeah, no, yeah. And that's actually very good question because it's like, thinking like as far as like creatively, yeah, no, I mean like having like, this job, like for example, editing, and I'll say editing for like say, these types of shows that I work on. It's intense, man. It's intense. It's exhausting. It's time consuming. It's challenging. And I can only that would. I mean, I can't imagine having then dealing with that, and then like having someone like, I guess, sucking the energy out of you and being so toxic. It just, I would, yeah, no.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was actually a talking point that I wanted to bring up, and that's kind of like a topic that we've had maybe these past 2 episodes. For sure, by the time this episode comes out, the Cisco and Mike episode comes out, it's a podcast I was on, but we were talking about an exchange of energy.
Oh.
And it's actually something that I want to talk to you about because we were talking about production and editing, and we were talking about how like maybe you're cooped up in a really dark room because you want to see all the lights and colors. You're listening to like the different songs that the composer sends you, how that fits into the certain scene. There's so much that goes into editing a small little scene, which that's a whole other podcast in itself, but it's also an exchange of energy. It's also you reading the room, reading what the directors want for a certain scene, and how do you translate that into the scene itself. And like, that's a whole transfer of energy in itself. Like we've talked about this on the podcast. Like if I come in with like a really like low energy and tranquilo, like I really don't feel like doing anything, not really giving a fuck, that transcends into the listeners, right? That energy that I bring into the podcast ultimately goes through the listeners' speakers, and like it gives them that same energy. Now you have the kind of obligation of like putting an energy into a scene and making sure the audience feels a certain way. And there's just so much that goes into it because it's also your energy. It's also the producer's energy. It's the composer's energy and the energy that you want to put out. And that's crazy to me, tying this all back in together. And that's why I kind of asked you if you were like spiritual in a way, because it's all energy. I said energy way too many fucking times.
Energy.
Say it one more time. That's the name of this podcast. Energy.
No, that is no, man. That's great. I love that because you're so. I mean, yes, you're right. People ask me, for example, like I will never forget this. People ask me, how do you become a better editor? Like, what do you do? And I think they're always surprised about what I say. I'm like, I just like having experiences with people. I love traveling. I love talking to people. Because it's like it really understanding people's emotions and energy. I'll say it again. But you bring that into a scene. You transfer that into how you put a performance together, and having that sensibility to an actor's performance. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it helps. I think if you have an understanding of that and you're more accustomed to it or more sensitive to it, I think that's kind of like, I've heard a lot of Sofia Vergara's interviews when she talks about her playing the role in Griselda, where obviously you see her in a light of like Sofia Vergara. You put her in this kind of bubble, if you will, of Modern Family, of a comedian. And that energy, going back to the freaking, I think that's the title of this podcast, energy, of her being a comedian. And a lot of people were criticizing her of, she doesn't look the way the actual Griselda looks like, right? But in her mind, what she was saying is that, she didn't want to portray Griselda. What she wanted was people to get her out of the role or the image of Sofia Vergara or the character that she was playing in Modern Family. So it's that same energy that we keep talking about, right? And you kind of put a play into that too, because you have that kind of obligation on your shoulders as an editor of making sure us, the viewers, don't see her in that light. Oh yeah, I mean, look. I mean, even when the project, when I was working on Narcos Mexico, and you heard around the office that this project was going to happen. I mean, I don't know. This might have been like in 2017, around there. I don't know. But when I heard Sofia Vergara and Griselda Blanco, I was like, sign me up. Like I need to do this because it's like, because of that, because it's like, obviously that we all need the challenge. And I'm glad, obviously we all know it. And she says it, it's like, it's someone who is known for her comedic role in Modern Family, is now playing this dramatic role as Griselda Blanco, right? So I'm like, this is great. Like, sign me up, right? And so, I mean, like, that was our focus as editors, because the thing is, as in editing, in something like, say, a scripted television show, or a film, I mean, like, it's like, I mean, like, you're working with shaping these performances, right? Now, not to say that she killed it. She did an amazing job, right? But of course, now you're kind of piecing this together. But yes, that was definitely, it's like we were straying away from that modern, Gloria, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, that was a thing, no doubt about it.
Was that something that you really struggled with in production?
I cannot say I struggle with it. No, not a struggle. Again, because I think she did a phenomenal job, and I know how hard she worked. Like she even had her back gave out because she would walk a certain way.
Because the way she was walking, right? I did hear something about that.
Yeah, she learned she
like slipped. She has a slip disc or something happened to her back. Yeah.
So yeah, we lost Sophia for I think a couple days, right? Because of her back gave out. And so, she took it seriously. And look, I mean, like, and that's the thing. It's like, even, Andy Baez, our director, he would go to her house and like, and, she said it, he showed her how to smoke and how to snort cocaine. I mean, like, that's, I mean, like, all these things. Yeah. I mean, like and I really, I admire her, and I want her to win the Emmy and everything, because she had to create this role for her. She had to create this. She produced it, and so she championed this project. No one probably was going to give her this role. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so she's like, "Well, I'm just going to make it." It's kind of like what Salma Hayek did Frida. Mm-hmm. Same thing. You have to go out there and do and create this. That's why. And I tell people this: like, you got to go out there and you got to fight for what you want. Yeah. And honestly, I had to fight for Griselda. Like, I wasn't, when I was doing, I was doing Narcos Mexico. That was my first like sole like editing credit. And then I went off to do other shows, but I was still like kind of, fairly new, right? I mean, like I'm still building my resume and whatnot. I can't just assume like Griselda, I was gonna get the phone call and be like, hey, you want to do Griselda? Like I can't assume that. And I have to be out there. Even now, I think everyone I think should be out there just saying like, hey, this is what I want and why I deserve this. And putting yourself out there.
Advocate for yourself.
Advocate for yourself. Because you can't just assume things are going to happen. And so, I certainly had to do that for Griselda. I went out and talked to Andy and the producers and said, I'm the right person for this job because of this, and that. And I hope you consider me, right? And then I got the phone call,
Boom.
Yeah. Which is something I wanted to tie back into. I know I was like I said, we were talking about earlier, it's like, who does the research? I was like, I do. And I do it. And I went in on your podcast. Like, I think every single day I was listening to an episode, and like, I have 6-8 hour works. Like when I'm by myself, I clean carpets for a living. So it's like, I have a lot of time by myself. So I listen to podcasts all day. And I think I went through all of them, and something that stuck with me. And I think early on, cause I didn't go in order. I just kind of like, oh, I like this title. I like this title. And the feel for the day, I guess. And on one of the episodes, you were talking with the editors, and Kelly said something that really stuck with me. And it was, before I butcher it, I wrote it down. She said, what you think will be your big break will probably not be. And that really stuck with me. And I was like, wow, like that can be manipulated and kind of thought of in a lot of different ways. At least as far as us with the podcast, I thought about it, and like we've collaborated, we've done podcasts with people who have tons of followers, tons of views, but that doesn't necessarily translate into new listeners and new followers for us as Vive con Huevos. How does that kind of translate with you? How did you get your, how did you, first of all, let's start with, how did you get your way into Narcos and then Griselda, and how did that kind of tie in with like that big break? Really wasn't my big break, but now it is my big break.
Well, first of all, shout out to Kelly Stuyvesant, one of the other editors on Griselda. So when I got to LA, I was, I fell into still saying yes to those projects that were not gonna lead me down the right path, right? I was still kind of, still saying yes to like documentaries and all this stuff, right? And it wasn't until like, I think, actually, I remember one day I was driving down to San Diego, from LA to San Diego, and I had applied to 2 different projects, 2 different shows, like documentaries, docuseries, at the same company, right? But different projects, and I got rejected, like one on Monday and then one on Friday, like 0 for 2. And I get this. So the second one, I get that email. I'm on the 5, and that's when I mentioned I had a panic attack. I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna quit. And so so I remember I stopped at a Modern Times brewery, and ordered myself a pint, and I was sitting there, man. And I remember I reached out to my friend Will Z. We'll call him Will Z because I cannot pronounce his last name. And big time documentary editor. Shout to him. And he was like, "Hey man," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, man, I got rejected," and blah blah blah. I'm like whining. And it's like, "Hey man, don't take things like, stop being like basically a crybaby. Like it's not personal. It's business. Like get back on it. Like It's like, okay." And then it's like, and then literally out there, I'm like, all right, okay, what am I doing? Okay, let's refocus here, right? And so I go on, I think it was like Mandy.com, one of those production, I don't know, hub or one of those. And I see this post for, they needed an assistant on a featured film, like in low budget, And again, I was like, low budget, no money. Like this is, I don't want to do this, And then I'm like, wait a minute. Like, it's like, but you want to do films, right? Yeah. You want to do films. Like, I'm like, whatever. I'm going to apply. And sure enough, I get the phone call like the next day or whatever. And then like, I I get hired as this guy's assistant. Not this guy, Sasha Dylan Bell, another good friend of mine. Shout out to him. And so that now I'm working in films, right? I'm working in films, and I'm like, oh crap, this is great. As an assistant, I had never been an assistant. I'm just trying to kind of fake it till you make it, honestly, in a way, and I was just kind of here and there. I made a lot of mistakes, and Sasha had a lot of patience and whatnot. And so then that led to like, and then I'm like, oh, this is just like low budget, indie feature. Like no one is going to see it, this and that, or I don't know. But it had the cinematographer from the movie Saw, I remember, in it.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, actually, you're right. It was like, oh yeah, Saw. Like this guy had this, directed this and that. I'm like, all right, cool, we're on our way. And then like, yeah, sure, like nothing happens. And then I'm just kind of like filling in on gigs here and there, like filling in like a week here, a week there, like on jobs, just kind of here and there. And then I end up on a documentary called The Day I Met El Chapo. I don't know if you saw it with Kit del Castillo.
Yeah.
And,
it had a lot of controversies.
Yeah. So, man, this is going to be a long ass story. No, because it's all about like, rejection. Honestly, it's like, so I learn about this documentary that's going to be produced, and I apply as an editor. I want to edit this. And then I don't get the job. Wait, this is even worse than the over 2 thing. And then I'm like, all right, fine. I'll apply as an assistant editor. Tampoco me gusta.
Oh, gosh.
You guys need a water boy?
And so finally, like the post-production, the VP post-production calls me. He's like, hey, man. He's like, I know you don't probably want this. And if you don't, that's cool. Like maybe you know someone, but do you want to be a post-production coordinator? And a coordinator is like, you're just kind of like an office assistant, and it's clearly not what I wanted to do. And I remember I went back home. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to do this, man. I'm not going to be a coordinator, this and that. And I will say someone at that time in my life said, you're making the wrong decision. You should take the job. I'll give her that.
The one green flag.
Yeah, exactly. And so whatever. So I take so whatever. I become a coordinator, and I don't like it because it's great people, but it's just like it's office work, not my thing. But then I get promoted to assistant editor on that project because the assistant editor left. Oh. So I stepped in, and again, I'm kind of just figuring it out. Anyways, the project ends and wrapped, and that's it. Like months down the line, I get a random email, and it says, "Hey, hi, Joaquin. I was wondering if you can share your researcher's name for our show." So, given that we were doing a documentary about Narcos and all this stuff, they wanted our researcher who like looked up all the footage, for the documentary. If we could share, I could share his name for their show. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Here you go. And then I look down at the signature, and it says Narcos Productions. And I'm like, oh, let me go on IMDb. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a producer on Narcos. Oh my God, I go crazy because Narcos, the Colombia one, was like,
it was a hit.
I was my favorite shows.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, so, I give them the information.
Do you need a coordinator?
P.S. Do you need an assistant over there? Yeah. And I remember thinking about, because I remember the cursor blinking, and I'm like, should I write this? Like, again, it's like, well, what's gonna happen if but I don't know. I thought like maybe I'm gonna get like on some like blacklisted or no say I don't know. I don't
Guy asked for a job. No.
Yeah, I don't know, right? And it's like, and then
Pediche, Joaquin.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, screw it. And then he replies, yeah. Do you speak Spanish, and are you in the union? And I'm like, well, yes and yes. And he's like, oh, well, meet me on Monday. And I remember walking into the offices, they were doing. They hadn't announced it. I don't think they were doing Narcos Mexico. So I walk into the office. I remember this, and I see on the wall, Diego Luna, Michael Peña, and I'm just like,
starstruck.
Oh, it's like some of my favorite actors, And it's like, why are we doing Narcos Mexico? I'm like, and then so yeah, like that. So then that's how I got the job. Like that's how I got the job.
You shot your shot, literally.
O sea, it was just kind of like, I guess I never like. I mean, it's I guess for me, maybe it happened the other way, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think it was like when you think that something is not going to lead to something, that's when it happens. That's the thing. Because also, like, for example, like the way I got to be an editor was because kind of in a way was like, I cut this short film. It was a short film, action film, that probably no one saw, but it was cool. It was cool. And it had money and it looked good. Like, you're like, oh, that's legit. Right. And so I showed that to my editor who I was assisting, and he's like, oh man, like you can cut. Like you can cut. Like you have talent. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't like. When did I think that was gonna open doors, right? So, anyways, that was a long ass story, but I
no,
we like long stories.
I like it. I mean, well, it tells your story of how you got there, and I think that's ultimately kind of what I wanted to like kind of wrap around the podcast is how you got to where you are now. Because I mean, there are people who Jesus. I hope likes editing. If not, then I just kind of threw them in there. But hopefully, there are listeners or people who follow you that are going to hopefully listen to this podcast and be like, well, how did Joaquin get here? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just like we were talking about earlier. It's not one straight road. Oh. It's not one this is what you got to do. You got to leave the Michigan and then go to New York and then go backpack in Budapest and do all this stuff. It's just a lot of small victories kind of wrapping everything together. It's this small victories that lead to one big old thing. And then not having that fear of rejection that I want to talk about too is like what I kind of like mentioned in the beginning. It was like, you're going to get rejected. And it's just like letting go of that fear of, okay, but I got to move on.
Yeah, now to me, it's just like a game. I think it's like, honestly, like, I'm so conditioned to it. It's like now, I mean, at this point, it's like, I'm shameless, man. I just like I'm out there, like trying things, and if I get rejected, all right, well, let me move on to the next thing. Like I said, now it's just completely different, But that was something that held me back for years, and that is something that with editing also as well. It's like, you have to be, if you want to be an editor, you have to be open to criticism and people not liking what you do and be okay with it. Like, you can't, as someone told me, like, you can't take it personally. Like, you just have to, it's like, we're collaborating here, But it's like, all that is like understanding that, look, when I got to LA, it was rejection, like left and right. It led me to a freaking panic attack, It was so much rejection. It was crazy. But I think, it's like kind of changing your mindset around it. It's like, all right, now I'm just using this as a learning opportunity. Well, and that's why I tell my students, it's like, all right, I got rejected or whatever, something didn't work out. Let me go back to the drawing board, figure this out. It's like, okay, where can I improve? So now I embrace it. I'm just like, okay, sure. I learned something and I just become better. But I'm just like now at this point, just completely desensitized, I guess, or conditioned to like just taking risks or, at this point, it's not even really a thing for me anymore, honestly. But it took a while to get here.
To get to that point. That's crazy. And then, so you shot your shot now from Narcos Mexico to now Griselda. How did that happen?
Well, yeah. So Narcos Mexico, we do season 3 of Narcos Mexico, the last season, but before that, I started hearing about Griselda, and yeah, when I heard about it, they were thinking about doing it. I was like, oh man, this would be a great project to work on. And then I was often doing, I think we were doing Dark Winds for AMC. And that's when I heard like, oh yeah, they're greenlighting this thing. It's happening. And so like right away, I'm like, email or text or whatever to the director, Andy Baez, and our producers, and just pitching myself, like I'm the guy, or at least one of them, because I knew there was going to be another editor. And so, I want the other seat. Like I want it. And that's and it's funny because like I recently just interviewed Alex Trudeau. He edited the Bon Jovi documentary, which I highly recommend. Even if you don't like Bon Jovi, like it's a good watch. But the same thing, it's like it's just getting kind of just conditioned. Like to putting yourself out there. You have like you don't have a choice. You have to do it. You have to tell people what you want to do. You have to put yourself out there or else people just simply are not going to know what you want to do. And that was, and look, again, I have a lot of mentors. Some people like probably don't know that they're my mentors, you know, but it literally just took maybe like one thing that they said to me that I've carried with me my entire life, or at least for years now. But someone told me like, hey, like, for example, a very A-list editor. It's like, don't be the quiet one. Like, don't be the quiet one. And I've seen it where, like, for example, like people lose opportunities or just are not recognized because they're literally just like, for example, don't talk, don't share.
They're afraid to speak up.
Speak up.
Yeah.
I was saying, and even like as far as like just simply like sharing, like, you know, stories or like, what did you do over the weekend? Like, this is so simple, but it's like, but just putting yourself out there, and so. Like now I'm just like, I think I probably do it too much, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's like, I go, you know, I dial it up and but you have to, I mean, and so, but it wasn't, I just didn't learn that, like, you know, overnight. Like it took a lot of, that's the thing, that took a lot of, I mean, deep work to get to that point, to get to this point. I mean, yeah.
That's crazy.
That is.
Yeah.
I'm curious of something. You brought this up the other day, but I actually do want to ask. I want to know. How was like growing up in Tijuana and like being Mexican and like working on Narcos Mexico, like you know, like knowing a lot of this, like we just know, you know, because of the people that were around, because of being so close to the border. Like, how was working on this project? Like, how did that connect, maybe like on a personal level, or like, you know, just like growing up?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, like that is something that I used to my advantage when I met the producers in the first season, sharing, you know, where I came from and, you know, what I grew up with. And that came into play. So like, I mean, like I remember like, for example, as an assistant, they would bring me into like the rooms or, you know, to watch like footage, like maybe archival footage of like, you know, Tijuana. And it's like, you know, it's like, oh yeah, well that, you know, that if you want to use it for like, say this year time period, well, they didn't have like the, I don't know, this fence, or like they didn't have that wall. So, you know,
Ese no es el baby rock.
Like that. So I mean, so yeah, it was a great asset for them, you know? I mean, so that helped me out a lot. But yeah, well, I mean, especially season 3, because that was like Tijuana, you know?
It was funny because we would watch that, and it kind of played close to heart because it wasn't that long ago.
No,
it was like, we were still babies, you know. It's crazy. Like, and we would like watch the Netflix series, and I would like text my swag, and I was like, "You were here, huh?" It's like you were partying right now. I saw you in the background.
No, and you know, and the research that they did, you know, on just that series. I mean, they really researched you know, stuff and history and, you know, I mean, they really knew their stuff. And so, I mean, there's, man, this is gonna sound weird. I mean, man, I know this stuff is bad. Obviously I know, but there's a sense of, I'm very proud of being from Tijuana, honestly. And not honestly Tijuana, this region, like I am like proud, and again, why I'm excited to be here, like doing this here and, you know, where I grew up and with my people, you know, I love this stuff, you know? And so, it was exciting. It was exciting. Let's put the subject matter aside, you know? It was like a personal project almost, you know? Even like, you know, I have my part of my family is from you know, Culiacán, Sinaloa, and even like I think the first season, when they watched the first season, they called me and they're like, oh my, you know, because it goes deep into like the history of like, you know, narcotráfico and Mexico and this and that, and it's like they called me like, oh man, they got all this right, oh my god, like this, all these things that I didn't know about because it's like, you know, back in the day. But so there's like I mean, it was a very personal project, you know, again, without going into the whole nautical aspect of it.
I would think it was, you know, I really wanted to know if you did feel that way, because I would think that like, as someone that grew up here and got to work on something like that would make it like kind of like a personal project, even more like fired by it, you know?
Well, I made a YouTube video Or I literally made like back in the. I mean, look, I used to. This is stuff I would make at home. I made a little short film with my friends when I think I was like 14 years old, and it was called. We did a so-called like a spec commercial for the cereal called Tejana Flakes, and it's this guy that's trafficking cornflakes.
Oh my God, I love this.
And I'm like, you can find doing research. It's on my YouTube channel. You can find it, Tejana Flakes. And it's me going after this guy who stole my Tejana and literally had the cornflakes box with like Tejana flakes and the Tejana on top. I mean, it's the whole thing, man. So clearly I was destined for this.
I freaking loved it. You were destined.
No, seriously. And that's what the video's about. It's like,
that is like a full circle moment in your life. Like,
I mean, it really is, I mean, because we grew up with this.
Yeah.
That's why I was telling people, I was in a recent interview, I'm like, yeah, like, even like Sofia Vergara, I mean, she has her stories about in Colombia.
Yeah.
Like her brother was killed.
Yeah.
And so my brother's still alive.
Running marathons.
But I'm saying like, no, sad. But I, telling someone, yeah, like we grew up with this stuff. It's, you don't partake,
yeah.
but
it's inevitable. Like it's part
it's there.
of.
It's just your life.
Yeah.
It's different. I think people have a hard time really understanding that.
I think outside
really do,
of a border state, people really do have a hard time understanding that. Even like we've talked to people up like in LA, and they're like so like confused about the fact that we would just be in Tijuana all the time, and I'm like,
well, we talked about it briefly where it's like, oh, you grew up in Tijuana, or like you grew up crossing the border, and they're like, they look at you like if you're so different.
So
but to
weird,
us it's like it's just so normal. And sometimes I trip out too. I don't know if this happens to you, Jesus, but like we cross the border sometimes, and I was like, do you ever just trip out that we were just in another country?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
2 seconds ago?
I don't look at TJ as another country.
But-
I'm like,
well,
but it is. It's a whole ass other country.
And it's like, but it was like, we have Sentry, thank God, and it takes us like sometimes 15-20 minutes to cross the border, but it's like, it really is. It's like you were in another country just 20 minutes ago. Like it just when you actually like think about it, it's trippy.
Yeah.
But to us, it's just so normal. And then you travel an hour and a half up north, and to them, it's not normal.
No.
Like when people are like, like I'm gonna go to Mexico for the weekend. I'm always like, oh, cool. Like, where are you going? And they're like, Tijuana. And I'm like, that's not. I mean, it is. But like, I thought you were going to like Puebla or something.
Cancun, or something.
Puerto Vallarta.
Well, that's the thing. Like, well, when I go to LA, because I'll be like, oh yeah, where'd you come from? Like, I was in Tijuana. They're like, what you drove? Like, how you drove? How? What?
It's like, why did that took you 10 hours, right?
I'm like, no, man. It's like maybe 3. I guess.
Like, I get to Tijuana faster than I get to work. Like,
honestly, Some people ask me, it's like, oh, you're really close to the border, right? And I was like, dude, honestly, it takes me longer to get from my house to the freeway than it does from the freeway to Tijuana. Yeah, so I'm very close. But I think we've said this in a lot of different podcasts. Like, we're very privileged, and I'm very happy to say that we did grow up in a border state and in a border city. My parents are Salvadorian, but obviously they were conscious of the fact that where we were when they came here, when they came to SD. And then me being able to kind of have both things in my life, going back to Central America and then being able to go to Tijuana and living that life, I feel so blessed.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think we're privileged. I mean, we live in an amazing, I'll say, region.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I knew. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when I was in New York, I was like, no, I mean, I belong over there. Like, I mean, I love this place, honestly.
Yeah. and I feel like it just exposes you to so much. And Paulina says this a lot. It kind of gives you like that, like street smart kind of.
Yeah.
It exposed you to kind of like tying it back to Narcos Mexico. It exposed you to a lot of things that maybe you shouldn't have been exposed to at certain ages,
Oh, yeah.
And, growing up here in San Diego, and it's like, oh, maybe si me la voy a llevar tranquilo type of deal.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I remember going to que era el Iguana Ranas, I think at Rebu, which I think at 13 years old, like, o sea,
no business.
No business.
O sea, it's just a different life.
Yeah.
I mean,
Truly is. So kind of going back to like Narcos Mexico and Griselda and like all your other projects, is there a project that has been like your favorite?
Well, I mean, they're well, I mean, like, yeah, they all have their thing, you know, and they're all special in a way. I mean, like Griselda was just, I mean, it really was a dream project. I can't, you know, it's like, you know, you're creating this, you're collaborating with so many talented artists, you know, and you're going to work literally every day with friends.
Yeah.
To create just like you're creating a cool show. And that's what I was kind of mentioning earlier. It's like, yeah, man, like this is it. Like for me, it's like, ¿qué más quiero? I don't know. It's like, this is amazing, right? You know, we had so much liberty. I mean, we worked on this thing for a year. That's for a TV show. That's not very common. So you just have this liberty to just like be creative, you know? And so that was, I mean, yeah, that show was, again, just a dream to work on and so special. But, you know, yeah, look, same thing was for Narcos, you know? So that working, you know, literally that was like my first big break, working on a show that I really had enjoyed, even though it took place in another country. But like, again, with amazing like artists. I mean, like, it's crazy, right? It's like, for example, right? I grew up listening to rock en español, you know, and Gustavo Santaolalla produced literally like every band that I'm a fan of in rock en español. And now suddenly I'm collaborating with Gustavo Santaolalla, like on a show. I was like, what? Like, it's like, you're like, what? Like, what's that? like, it's like, and then it's like, you know, Wagner Mora, you know, who played Pablo Escobar on Narcos. Oh, it's like, well, now he's my director. Like now hey, Wagner, what's up? Like, you know.
Got his doppelganger right next to you.
He dressed up as him when you're actually.
We gotta show you. We gotta show you his Halloween
I
costume.
gotta check it out. Yeah. But, you know, like that, it's like, okay, like now we're working together.
Yeah.
Like, collaborating. You know, so that was amazing. You know, but again, look, But also, like, I also don't want to be known as the Mexican guy who can just do these types of shows. I don't want to be pigeonholed into doing that, because I'm certainly not. I can do other things, you know. You know, something like Dark Winds, you know, or working with, you know, Native Americans, you know. So I'm a storyteller. O sea, I can tell stories. It's not just about like, okay, I'm here to tell, you know, stories about drug cartels, you know. And But it just happens that there was really cool shows, you know?
And when the opportunity presented itself.
Of course, you know, I'm just kind of making, I guess, an effort now to really, you know, navigate my career and just, again, not just simply be known as the guy who just, you know, does that type of content. Yeah. And I think anyone, like, as a creative, I think it's important to do that. And that's certainly something that I was told when I was coming up as an assistant editor, like to just be careful with that, you know, like don't fall for that, because you easily go down that route, you know.
It's hard because I know I forget his name, but there's a meme that goes around that he's just known as Hector. It's the Cholo from the Fast and the Furious movies. His name is Hector. Or that's his character. Like, he's only known for his Hector. You know, that's him. You know, and there's a meme going around. It's like, oh, what movie did you play in this movie? Hector. What movie did you play here? What character did you play in this movie? Hector. And it just goes around every single movie. That's who he is, the Cholo Pelon named Hector.
Yeah, exactly. It's very easy to fall into that trap, I guess. You know, I mean, I guess it depends on what you want to do, but you got to I think it's important to be careful with that, you know. But yeah, I mean, like there were, but you know, I can't deny that there were amazing shows, and it was a blast.
Do you? Like, I know you edit them and you guys probably have like a preview and stuff, but like once it's on Netflix, do you watch it at home?
I watch
any of your projects? Not just
I watch it because my wife wants to watch. Yeah. I it's tough for me to watch.
It's like you in the podcast.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. No, I cringe like when I just it's hard to watch my own.
That's what I wanted to know.
Stuff that I work on. It's very difficult, and I really only do it because my wife is a fan.
Or do you like criticize yourself as you're watching
that
it?
was my question. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm like, why? Oh yeah, that's the thing. It's like, fuck, why did I do that? Why did I do this? I can't watch it.
Yeah.
And I think in general, like watching anything, it's very hard for me nowadays to just watch something and enjoy it. I have to really force myself to not have that kind of critical
To like change your lens,
I just
right?
watch it and enjoy it. I say, no, the music, this and that. So I really have to just force myself, to not think like that. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know if I would watch. It's funny because like I don't ever watch the podcast. Like I listen to it, but I don't watch it because I'm like, I was there. Like I'm the one on the screen. I don't want to watch.
I need the views.
myself.
Click it.
Just click it. Walk away.
Like, did you listen to the podcast yet? And I'm like, yes. Did you?
But it's funny because I'll ask her on release date, and she's like, I listened to it like 15 times while you were picking the reels on Sunday. Of course I listened to it. And I was like, no, but this one counts. This is the view.
The view. Exactly. No.
I give you the view.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But we could keep going for days. I mean, we'd love to have you back whenever. Aquí tienes tu casa. You have your mic. So just let us know. But I do want to start wrapping things up because if not, we could go for like another 4 hours.
We probably could.
And I'm pretty sure your wife's going to call us like, ¿Dónde estás?
Jesus is going to call you to edit the podcast. He'll be like, this is too long.
You're going to get hit with one of those, mándame una foto con un tenedor. But before we do start wrapping things up, I kind of just want to ask you, I know you said like, ¿qué más quieres? But what is next for Joaquin?
I mean, career-wise, to me, I think my focus now, I mean, I still want to work obviously on cool stuff and, big projects and whatnot, but, high caliber stuff, it's not, but honestly, for me, it's like just working with good people. Mm-hmm. That's to me, like what matters, I think. I mean, it's just a huge priority in my life as far as like just working with, good people that we vibe and have a good time, honestly, and make, hopefully make some cool stuff, but I value that. I value that connection, I value that connection for sure. And I want to, I think, I want to keep growing my mentorship program. It's been so, it's so beautiful getting these, amazing messages from people to say like, oh, like you've changed my life, or, this from either your podcast or a YouTube video that you did, a talk that you gave. I mean, like, it's like, wow, man, like, it's crazy, right? It's like to go from a point where you're like, again, doubting yourself and being afraid to take risk and all these things and not going after your goals and whatnot, and so many things. And now being in a position where you're like actually changing people's lives. I mean, like that, I don't know, man. It's just like, it's an incredible feeling to get those messages. Yeah. And I really enjoy it. And it's something that I think I want to continue going in that direction and keep helping people, because a lot of people help me. Honestly, I couldn't have done, gotten here without the help of people. And I think for a while, I was trying to do things on my own, trying to figure it out on my own, and I wasted a lot of time. Now I don't have regrets. I don't like to say I have regrets. Here I am. I took this long, and I made all these mistakes. Fine, that was my journey. But I certainly, I could have avoided, wasting a lot of time on dumb shit, honestly. So yeah, I want to help people. I enjoy it. I love it. And I think that's what I'm meant to do, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw something a while back ago, and it has really stuck with me for a while. And I try to keep it into consideration when I'm collabing or I'm talking to like podcasts that are growing just as us, or maybe that have like less views than us or whatever it is. But it basically said, I'm blessed to bless. I'm blessed. Yeah, I am blessed to bless, basically. So I have the opportunity to be able to bless other people with maybe my knowledge or the platform, or dibble dabble in things that maybe could have worked for me. Like we said earlier, maybe this road didn't work for me, but I can tell you what did work for me or what didn't work for me. And like you said, maybe it'll help you not waste the time that I wasted. So you're blessed to bless people, basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just don't want to, I've made the mistakes for people, I guess that's the thing. It's like, and and yeah, I don't know. I just really, I don't know, man. I just take that to heart. Like or in the sense of like I really don't want you to go to the stuff that I did. I think I can really help you out, you know? But you know, people got to discover that kind of on their own, you know, but I'm just there kind of to guide them. And of course I'm not a therapist, I'm not a specialist, you know, but, I was going to say like what I do in my podcast intro, you know, I'm just a guy who, you know, but I literally say it in my podcast intro. It's like, I'm not a therapist. I'm just some guy that just works hard, man, and figures stuff out. And, you know, and I'm just real with people, you know, my students, and, you know, just, hey, this is what it is, man. And I try to just kind of guide you, show you the way. But in the end, you know, they got to, you know, everyone has to put in the work. It's like, you know, no one can do the push-ups for you, you know.
Well, facts. Yeah. I mean, I could have had 10 beers, but, you know, I chose not to.
Good job, baby. Good job.
Someone else drank them for me. Thank you, Jesus. But all right, guys, we are going to start wrapping things up. We could be here for days. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, I did too.
We could have definitely deep dived into a
There
lot of
was
different things.
times where I forgot I was in a podcast. I was so like into his
the
stories. I was just listening. I was like, oh wait, I'm part of this too.
I'm not just listening.
Dozing off. You're like,
No, I was so into your
No, but
your
it
talks.
does happen when you're engaging.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that I always hold dear to my heart, and is like the best form of human connection is through human experience. And that's what we're here to do. That's ultimately what we're here to do. Like you said, like you've gone through things in order for other people not to go through them, but at the end of the day, they do have to go through them anyway. So,
Yeah.
But like always, guys, when we have special guests, yeah,
I was like,
we
wait.
always end the podcast with some special questions.
Yes.
If you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, at what age would you go back to, and what would you say?
So I like that because it's like especially the question about the time period. I think I would go back to like kind of like my post college days, kind of between my almost like mid 20s to my early 30s, I would say. And I think it's honestly something that we talked about earlier on this episode. Was that, you know, be careful who you surround yourself with, honestly, la neta. Just, you know, I think it's, you know, important to surround yourself with like-minded people who are gonna push you to be better and, you know, achieve things. And I think, honestly, again, I don't have regrets, and, you know, but, you know, not gonna say but, you know, it's just that I think that also kind of helped me back for a bit. Also just thinking again, also I'm not just pointing the finger, you know, it's also like it falls on me, right? To also not making that decision to leave also, right? Which is now something that I am now, you know, have that ability, right, to say like, this is not for me. All right, I'm moving on, right? And I think before also just thinking that I had to make someone else happy, right? Not thinking for myself, you know? But in general, to answer, just go back to your question, I think it's important, I think, to surround yourself with the right people. I think all of us, I think we hear it from probably our parents, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's something that I did not understand, you know, for back in the day, even when my parents told me that, right? And it's like, now I see it, you know, and I would have done it differently. Yeah. And especially at that time period, because again, it was like kind of like my desmadre phase.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I kind of lost a lot of focus and was just kind of like, ooh.
Yeah. I've always said, like, we're blessed to be so close to the border and be, you know, Tijuana was so accessible. But at the same time, that was a pretty that was a huge downfall, because I think all of us kind of got lost in the sauce, as Paulina would say, in, you know, partying, and it kind of obstructed our view for at least for me.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, at least for me. It obstructed my view
kidding.
for a really long time. And los dichos están porque están. You know, they do say, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I mean, that is exactly it. We've heard it forever since we were kids. And again, it just didn't really hit me till till later in life, you know. And that's what I was certainly tell myself back in the day, and right now tell everyone else. I mean, like, just careful, man. Make the right decisions with regards to who you surround yourself with. That makes a huge difference, honestly.
Yeah, most definitely. And it did take me, at least me personally speaking, it did take me a really long time to comprehend that. And now I really do, like, you know, if my circle isn't evolving with me, then what am I doing?
That's
you know, and I think that's
like, well,
yeah, another 2 hours. Yeah. But it's something that, like, especially in this industry, you know, as we've collaborated with a lot of different people, I've been able to surround myself with people who want to grow, who have that like drive and motivation to want to keep doing more for their platform, and not just podcasting in itself, because we've talked about this before, that like there's podcasting that's just so overly saturated. It's like, what else do you want for your brand? So it's like, if we're not constantly growing, then what are we doing? And if my friend group, if my people who I'm surrounding myself isn't evolving with me, then I'm stagnant. And that's not what I want for my life. We all need to keep evolving and growing and doing better for ourselves and wanting more. Like we said earlier, money shouldn't be the driving force, but ultimately, you know, we do need money.
We all want a comfortable life.
Yeah. And if I'm not evolving and I'm stagnant, then that's also going to reflect in my paycheck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, man. And so, this thing is like, I guess like, I'm just like, one thing that I value so much now is just time. Like time is just like, to me, that's like kind of like my priority. And I just don't want to, I guess waste time on just, you know, people are going to kind of drag me down or not allow me to make progress, for sure. Because I already went through that and I'm not going through it again.
Yeah, that's why you have your mentor program.
Check it out, HollywoodEditingMentor.com.
I was about to say, if you want to shout anything out, where can people find you?
HollywoodEditingMentor.com. There you can find more information about my mentorship platform and all my, link to all my social media sites and the podcast, which is called the Hollywood Editing Mentor Podcast. You could find it on your favorite podcast
streaming services. Do you guys have anything else?
Do you use the acronym HEMP? HEMP?
What?
That's a good way to It's a good way to memorize it.
I'm gonna start using it.
I didn't even think about that. Now he owes you like a Venmo. Watch out for that Venmo request, bro. But Joaquin, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. This conversation is amazing. I know we could keep going forever. Like I said, you're more than welcome on this podcast anytime you want. Guys, you guys good?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Honestly, it was a real pleasure being here. And again, I just appreciate what you all are doing with this venture, this podcast. So just thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
We're
appreciate
excited
it.
to see what you do next.
Yeah, same. And then your wife's name Charlene, right?
Yes.
Charlene, thank you so much. And I know he's podcasting. He's podcasting, right? He's here.
Evidence.
It's been like 5 hours.
Sorry
Thank you so
about
much.
that.
Yeah. But guys, como siempre, thank you so much. Please make sure to like, subscribe, follow Joaquin on all his socials. Y como siempre, guys, live your best life, fight your fears. At the end of the day, the only thing that you regret are the things that you did not do. So vive con huevos, guys. We out of here. We love you. Peace.
Bye.
Never thanks.